Hey folks, I want to continue to work through Romans with you. This message may take a little longer than a minute. I just can't, I don't think I can fit it all in a minute, but there's a lot of people in the church today that have this false belief that they can live their life however they want. They can indulge in sin, they can live a lifestyle of sin, but because God is great in mercy and his grace abounds, they feel they can always come back to him and ask forgiveness and start all over, wipe the slate clean, and they can do this. That's how they live their life, and they don't really tackle sin in their life. It's just part of their life. And Paul addressed this issue when he was writing to the Romans. If you looked at chapter 6, verse 1 and 2, he says, "What shall we say then? Are we to continue in sin that grace may abound? By no means. How can we who died to sin still live in it?" Um, and we did die to sin. And he goes on to explain exactly how. In verse 6, he says, "We know that our old self was crucified with him in order that the body of sin might be brought to nothing, so that we would no longer be enslaved to sin." We have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer us that lives, but it is him in us. We cannot continue to live like the unbelievers do in a lifestyle of habitual, continual, unrepentant sin. The Spirit's just not going to allow us to do that. He will always bring us back into submission. We must put to death sin. When we find sin in our lives, we must put a stop to it immediately. You think about a garden. I heard this from my pastor this past Sunday. You think about a garden, and you've got your vegetables that are growing. When weeds creep up, you have to get those weeds out. If you don't, the weeds are going to overtake that crop, and that crop is not going to yield the fruit that it should. And it's like that with us in our life. If we do not put a stop to sin when we find it in our lives, it's going to suffocate us. It's going to hinder our walk with God. It's going to stop us or hinder us from producing good works and fruit in Jesus Christ. And if you look at Romans 6:11, he says, "So you also must consider yourselves dead to sin and alive to God in Christ Jesus." We must consider ourselves dead to sin. That old self was nailed to the cross. We are a new creation. We must walk in his ways and his statutes each and every day of our life.